Becoming number one was the Sun's raison d'etre. They were noising up the enemy, pushing boundaries, and they weren't frightened to take on the establishment.
Scottish lawyers used to think they could fire off, 2 pages to a newspaper, and that would shut the newspaper up forever. And they were all a bit pompous about this. And I remember the first time it happened was a story about Graham Souness, and fax came through from his lawyer, and it was making all these terrible threats about what he was going to do to us and demanding a reply by return of post. So we just pulled the fax off, scrawled across it, "Fuck off, yours Jack Irvine," and sent it back to him. And I'm told that he nearly collapsed when he read it. And he said he'd never been spoken to by a journalist in that way in his life. I said, well, now you're dealing with the Sun. And funnily enough, after word got round I'd done that, we actually had very few problems from lawyers.
But then it all got a bit personal. The target was the Daily Record's editor, Endo Laird.
In those days, everybody used to go to Blackpool from Scotland. So the Daily Record did a story about the beach being filthy and the landladies being just as filthy as the beaches, so don't go to Blackpool. And so the Sun in Scotland rode to the defence of Blackpool. And we said, oh, Blackpool's absolutely wonderful, and just created an argument out of nothing. We discovered there was a donkey called Endel. In fact, I think the headline was, "Ride Endel for free all weekend," which we thought was tasteful and amazing. Amazing to discover a donkey called Endel.
If your rivals descend to personal abuse, then you know you've won.
We didn't like that. I mean, at the Record, we thought that was pretty shameful.
I didn't look over my shoulder. We were there to produce the best possible paper, believe in what the Record we were producing. We were top of the heap, king of the road, and we kept producing what we thought was the best paper possible.
We had a life-size picture of Endel Laird, which we stuck on the wall and turned into a dartboard.
And the boys used to use it for target practice with hunting knives and air guns.
You were under instruction, a bit like the archers of England. You had to practice your darts by trying to hit Endel on the end of the nose.
And it was to get this kind of esprit de corps going, that there's the enemy and we're just going to stick it to them every day.
The Sun's HQ in London began to sit up and take notice of the bad boys over the border.
Kelvin Mackenzie had never been to Scotland. Yeah, Scotland? It's full of jocks, mate, you're all idiots. But as the sale began to go up, suddenly we were geniuses. And we were such geniuses that Rupert Murdoch decided to fly in to see us all in his private jet. Came into the office to see us, looked around the presses and all this sort of stuff. And there we had on the front page of one of our stories on the wall, "I surrendered to the Sun." Some crook, or whoever it was, had given himself up to us, and we splashed the story. He said, "I hope that wasn't any of your checkbook journalism, Steve." And we said, "Oh no, Rupert. Cash."
Irvine and Sampson had done their worst and were now ready to move on to uncharted territory. No longer to be a day of peace, they took their bully boy tactics to the Sundays. Leaving others to continue the onslaught on the Daily Record, the enemy was now the Sunday Mail. But their old boss isn't bitter.
The Sun was going to carry on being successful, with or without Jack, and has actually been a lot more successful since Jack has left. So that should be helpful for his career.
With their all-new Sunday Scot, they thought they had the winning formula to rival the mighty Sunday Mail.
65% of the people we interviewed said that they were fed up with the existing Scottish papers. They wanted something new, and they told us what they wanted. We're going to give it to them.
The new paper, the Sunday Scot, were talking an incredible amount about how good they were, how big they were going to be, how they were going to blow away this tired, lazy paper called the Sunday Mail.
They send young men to war because they have no fear of dying. And we'd done that bit with the Sun. So now we'd become young generals, and we had absolutely no fear of dying either. We didn't care.
Fact of the matter is that they've an Everest to climb. Whether they climb that, I don't know. But what I do know is that we're the kings of the mountain.
We presumed that they would have a remarkable page one story. We thought that they perhaps had found Lord Lucan as a bus driver in Tillicoultry.
We'd actually been working on a massive story about judges in Scotland, which I think those in the business know what I'm talking about. And we were led up a lot of blind alleys.
We came across a story about Billy Connolly. We actually discovered his mother living in Dunoon. For 2 weeks I had this story, and I had no safe in the office. So I actually put it underneath my seat. So I sat in the story for 2 weeks before we put it in page 1, 2 and 3.
And what did the Sunday Scot have up their sleeve to wow the world with?
Lee's story on launch was a bucket of shite, and I don't want to talk about it.
The Sunday Scot came out that night, and we went through it from page 1 to the last page. And we thought it was a spoof.
Rip it up and start again. Rip it up and start again.
It was very difficult after that. If you don't have a really, really, really great story in your launch, it's a bit of an uphill struggle after that.
The Sunday Scot lasted only 14 weeks before the plug was pulled, to the obvious delight of some.
I take great personal pleasure in former colleagues failing. So I have, there is never a moment when I don't reflect on what a great decision that was for Jack to leave to the Sunday Scotsman. Yes, I do.
For Samson and Irvine, the time was right to bow out. The failure of the Sunday Scot might not have been the best note on which to end their journalistic careers, but there was no going back, and the Sun's battle to beat the record has been getting on fine without them. Nearly 20 years after the first punch was thrown, the battle is just as intense.
I'm sad to say that because there is only one Rupert Murdoch, the Sun will probably win. It shouldn't. And I don't mean that anti-Sun. It shouldn't. The Daily Record should be the highest selling newspaper in this country because it's Scotland's newspaper.
And it's going to take a good fight from the Record to stave them off. I think we'll do it, but it's going to be long and bloody out there.
Even if the Sun does win the battle, it won't necessarily mean they've won the war.
We can't be complacent because that's what happened before. You know, the Express were complacent about the Record came up, overtook them. The Record were complacent about us, we will come up, overtake them. So you've got to keep on top of your game at all times.
Whoever emerges as the victor of this chapter in Scotland's bloody tabloid history can be sure it won't be the end of the story. The real challenge will be to stay in prime position, and that's a story that's set to run and run.